I'm Christian Lavolsi, and welcome to the Hot Seat.
On the Hot Seat, we tackle the toughest business questions, addressing the most pressing issues our business community faces today. We dive into the core of business growth and strategic development. Whether you're launching a startup, managing a growing business, or refining an established enterprise, we're here to provide you insights that you need. Get ready for candid conversations and practical advice that you can implement today. Stay with us and let's grow your business together.
Welcome to the Hot Seat. It is Tuesday. We're on fire here today. It is. We are definitely sliding down into the end of the year. It is school holidays here in New South Wales, and we're here to talk about roadblocks in your business. How are you going today?
I'm going well, but we're not broadcasting to LinkedIn today. I just got a notification saying there is an issue with the live broadcast on LinkedIn, but we are streaming everywhere else around the world on Facebook. So yes, I'm actually really well. I'm pretty sure that I have knocked out long COVID by going and being a badass and started training like every single day, like the non-extreme personality that I am. But yeah, I feel it at about 6 o'clock at night when I'm like, okay, that's it. It's like Darth Vader is here. No, I'm feeling great. Thank you.
That's awesome. All right, it is Tuesday. We're here for the Hot Seat. And today I've got a really cool topic. I think this is going to be a fun one for us to talk about. And it's all about the roadblocks in the business. And you, as the person being the roadblock in your own business. So let's jump straight into it. My first question for you today, Christian, is what are the most common ways that we bottleneck or roadblock our own businesses? Where are we getting stuck?
I mean, that's a really good question, and it's one that that seems to affect a lot of people. I think, look, I like to refer this to sort of self-imposed bottlenecks, okay? Because a lot of people create this themselves. So recognizing how we might inadvertently be creating these bottlenecks in our business is actually really, really important for fostering a more efficient and successful operation, okay? So we need to be really clear there. And some of the common things that I see business owners do, and this is normally not just when we first meet them, it's also when we're advising them. Okay, there are some very stubborn people who, it doesn't matter how many times you tell them to do something, and I know if you're out there listening, you know who I'm talking about, and I know a lot of our students and members listen to the Hot Seat as an extra form of teaching, but the most common one is actually micromanagement. And I think that's the nice way of me describing that. So a lot of business owners delve too deeply into overseeing every minor detail of operation. And that can lead to significant delays, but also a lack of empowerment. And it restricts the flow of tasks, Simone, and also inhibits employees' ability to execute any of their responsibilities independently. Now, a lot of owners will say, oh, but Christian, they're not doing what I asked them to do. Well, that's another issue. That's completely different. So, you've got to be careful not to have a laissez-faire leadership approach either, that is just let people do whatever they want to do, because that's not going to work out either. I'm just adjusting my volume control because it looks like it's picking up a hell of a lot. Inadequate delegation is another common roadblock. So a lot of business owners fail to actually delegate, period. And then when they do, they fail to delegate effectively. And this is a very common roadblock. So holding on to too many tasks that could be managed by others not only slows you down, but it slows down the process, but also prevents all of your staff from developing, I guess, their own skill sets, but also taking more responsibility. And I know that anyone listening to this is going, aha, that's me. I micromanage, I delegate. We all do this, okay? And this is why it's really important to have advisors around you, to have people that you know that they're going to give you an unbiased viewpoint of what you need to do. Someone that I recently was speaking to said, I don't trust anyone who doesn't have a mentor or an advisor. And I was like, that's really interesting. And they're in business and they're looking for someone and they're going to be joining our community. I'm almost 100% certain. But it was really interesting. And that was their question. So who mentors you? And I was like, hey, this one's easy. Here are the 5 people. And you can look them up. So I think what's really important here is that then there's things like a lot of owners in today have a reluctancy to adopt new technologies or even new systems. And this also hinders the business's efficiency. Now, this level of resistance, Simone, can actually create bottlenecks in areas like data processing, communication, and just overall workflow. So if you're one of those...
That surprises me, because I would have thought that people are so quick to sign up to another app, another automation, another this, but it's not the case.
No, some people are, and then they do nothing with it. And that brings me to another point. The over planning, right, without execution, or the procrastination. You know, I was speaking to someone who I really respect, and they said, oh yeah, I bought that program for $5,000 8 months ago and I've done nothing with it. I was like, you realize that now I just lost a little respect for you. And they were like, what? I'm like, well, you got to practice what you preach, mate. You know, here you go, you got and bought something and then you don't use it. And I hear that a lot from people. And so that's that. So it's not just the adoption of technology; it's the implementation, the execution, and the procrastination, right? So then you've got, you know, the other bottleneck that people create for themselves is that without clear or documented processes, and tasks, without documented processes, tasks tasks can easily become muddled. Is what I'm trying to say. I muddled myself. Right, leading to inefficiencies as well as confusion about particularly deadlines and boundaries and responsibilities. So this level of ambiguity actually slows down a lot of operations and increases the risk of error. And a lot of people don't realize it's them as business owners creating that. So, and finally, probably the one thing that I see way too often is just the shit communication that a lot of owners have. And a lot of that is because, by the way, me included, I'm very good at helping other people communicate clearly. But sometimes when I'm in the go mode, and we run a very lean team in terms of the advisory business, and yes, there's lots of other people in the other companies. Sometimes our ineffectiveness to communicate things can cause that a significant bottleneck because we think we're not being heard. Right? Or we think we're being misunderstood as owners. That's not the case. So if team members are not clear on the expectations or the next steps, projects will stall and opportunities for collaboration and innovation will be missed, ladies and gentlemen. So look, some of the things that I think people could do immediately in their business, obviously you know that it's probably you're going to ask me, so I may as well just tell people, is, I think more importantly is that you've got to regularly assess how your involvement impacts the workflow of your company. You need to identify tasks that you can delegate and then train your team to handle those responsibilities. This is pretty simple stuff, but people don't do it. And that's what drives me crazy. You got to stay open to new tools and systems because they will allow you to streamline your operations and as well as enhance your communication. I mean, we use Slack really, really well. And then we also use ClickUp to issue tasks and to keep track of things because we're an organization that moves incredibly fast, as you know. And so, keeping up is the challenge and then being able to document. But then we also have a weekly meeting where we come back and go, okay, what did we do? What didn't we do? What gets carried over? And then it's kind of like, well, why? And since we've done that, we pulse so much faster. So I think develop and document all your key processes. That's fundamental. I think it's really important to set specific timelines for decision making and action steps to ensure that the planning phases actually lead to execution. The amount of times that I've gone into companies where they wrote a strategic plan 5 years ago, and amazingly, it was actually an excellent strategic plan, but the companies are on the verge of failure. It's like, hey, why didn't you guys use this? Like, well, we didn't have a way to execute it. And that's because these beautiful, glossy, 60-page documents that come from one of the big four, who charged, $250,000 for the luxury. No offense, I got friends and people that are in charge of some of those companies, so but this is a common issue that I see in large companies. Small companies hire a shit coach who says they can do strategy and then produce shit, right? So you've got the end of the spectrum, and again, someone's probably sitting there thinking, well, that's because you think you're amazing. No, I don't. The results say that I'm amazing. That's simple. And the results is because our clients are phenomenal and they execute. That's it. So it's and one of the reasons is we help them with the planning process. Like, that's it. But they execute. Without that execution, it's impossible, right? So, and I think I touched on improving the communication. So, Simone, look, recognizing and addressing all the self-imposed roadblocks that I talked about today, I think people can actually streamline their operations, empower their teams, and drive their business towards greater success. And that's our aim, and that's, I hope that that advice relates to people, and they can connect the dots.
Yeah. I really love that. I think there's so many takeaways in that point. Yeah. I'm going to move into my second question now, and you kind of touched on this a little bit. But how can we as leaders really understand where the problems are? Because I know you mentioned that if you've got a coach or an advisor, that they can highlight things to you. Can you figure it out on your own, or does it really need to come from a third party? Or how do you get that helicopter view to go, oh wow, I'm actually doing that? How do you get that awareness?
You can do it on your own, absolutely. I know lots of really smart people who have done it on their own. It's a minority. I didn't do it on my own. I did a lot of it on my own, but that 10%, you want to be great, you can't do it on your own. It's simple, no matter how good you are. I know he won't mind me saying it, but Toby Pierce from Sweat is probably, if you don't know Sweat, they sold the company for $400 million. He's young, smart, focused, and he would be the first person to tell you he didn't get there on his own. He had good people around him. He invested heavily in finding people that addressed his weaknesses, and he read so many books. He's a young man, well, was a young man at the time. He's still young. He's in his early 30s. But Toby was the person that inspired me to read 53 books in 1 year, because I thought to myself, fuck it, if he can do it, why can't I do it? And I created the discipline of doing it. And that was after we had breakfast together, and we just talked about this stuff. Disappointingly, he's now moved up to Queensland, along with some other people I know, and I might be moving to Noosa too at this rate, to hang around with everyone else that I like hanging out with. Seems like that's where everyone seems to go. But I think that's really important about self-leadership, is that you can do it on your own, but the greatest leaders in the world never do it on their own, Simone. And I think that's the point I'm making. So you've got to accept that leaders and business owners have to accept that in their role in creating bottlenecks within their businesses, there is a high degree of self-awareness and introspection that's essential, okay? And so I think the way that I've always been able to navigate, particularly in the later half of my career, where I have succeeded considerably more than I did in the first half of my career, I always like to make the distinction, the first 40 businesses were really a test of my resilience, and the next 40 were a test of what I learnt. And I think that's really, really important. And we get better every single time, but we make common mistakes, and it is why we need to have people around us that can tap us on the shoulder and remind us. So even the advisor to advisors, which is me, has an advisor. Like it's pretty simple. And I'm surrounded by a little micro board of people that give me that advice. So seeking regular feedback would absolutely be the first thing that I would be saying to people. It's the most effective way to gain insight into your impact, but also it encourages honest and constructive feedback. And I'm not saying this externally. I'm saying this from your team, your peers, and your mentors. And we do this regularly in our company. We will always talk to each other openly and honestly. I'm probably way too open and way too honest and confronting, and so that can sometimes put you guys off because I can be very straight to the point. But then I think that's also why you guys respect me, is you know exactly where you stand, and it's never personal when shit isn't going right. And I think the example was yesterday morning's team meeting where I didn't blow up, but I made the point: if you're not ready for these meetings, don't turn up. Like it's simple, and it wasn't directed at you. But the point is, and
two-way street, right? So not only are you then communicating that to your team, you're leading by demonstration in that you want them to reciprocate that, so you can learn from those moments of what you might be roadblocking that you might not see, right? If you have open dialogue with your team, they should be able to feed that back in some sort of way. Absolutely.
And that gets a triangle tink. I think what's really cool, Simone, is some time ago, I think in June, you said, I love everything that we do, but I really dislike sometimes that we don't practice what you teach, and what you teach works for everybody else. And when we sat down and we talked about it, we worked out, okay, we can't do what we teach because we move so fast. And so, but then there were so many things that we could do, and we've implemented all of those. So again, because of that feedback loop, and, I'm an advisor to advisors and to business owners, and I take advice from my team. Like that's, you got to look at the intelligence of the people that are doing the work all the time. So I think the other thing that I would say to most owners is regularly review the outcomes of your projects and your daily operations. If you notice recurrent patterns, particularly around delays or problems, then this can be traced back to your decisions and management style, right? And this, this will be a really good approach for a lot of people, and they don't realize they can do that. And again, engage in 360 reviews. I just touched on that. But I think another thing, and Jody from Bohu Engineering sent me the NPS score for the team. We constantly track each month the Net Promoter Score within the company because we're growing. And also we want to understand the needs of people. And so I think, monitoring the team morale and the performance, really, really important. Obviously, you do that. If you've got under 5 people, you can just ask people. But when you start having 60, 70, 80, 100 employees, that makes a big difference. Practicing self-reflection. I love these hot seats because essentially they are an ability for me to reflect on sort of what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do. But I think another big one is, educate yourself, right? Educate yourself on the impact that you can make as a leader. And 100%, if you're in business and you don't have a coach or a mentor, you are leaving 50% of your talent on the table. I know that that's easy to say because we have, 3 brilliant coaching programs, mix/advisory. We call them more advisory programs because we just don't hold your hand. We actually help you do it. And I think that it's easy for someone like me to say that, but I've had a mentor and a coach my whole life. When I was a professional athlete, I had coaches. I couldn't have got where I got to without them. Yes, I had 60% talent, 20% effort, and 20% was the coaching.
Yeah,
and that 20% made me 80% better.
A little bit more. I'm going to scratch my third question because I think you've already answered it in what we talked about. I'm going to just throw this at you, Christian. How do you find the right mentor for you? Because I strongly believe in mentorship and finding the right coach or mentor, but I actually don't think I've ever really put a lot of thought into who I was going to approach. I've just naturally, call it intuition, I don't know, but I've naturally found people that I think there's a time and a place for different mentors, right? And this is why you have why do you have five? Why do you should you always have one? Should you always have multiple? Talk to me a bit more about your opinion on mentors.
I think that the first thing you got to do is you got to split the emotion from the reality. What do you really need? So many people get sucked into the pain and pleasure marketing, right? Like, I'm going to be honest with you guys. We don't play that game because we suck at it, because it's not me by nature. So the first thing is you have to align with that person's values. Right? Like, if you don't, then don't worry about it. That doesn't mean you have to like them. I have two of my mentors that I don't like. Like, I don't like the way they speak to me. I don't like, right? But we have very aligned values. They're just assholes, right? Like, no, seriously. They know, if they're listening to this, they'll know exactly who they are. I have a lot of admiration for them, and I pay them handsomely for their advice. But I don't want to be like them, but we have aligned values. So I know that when they're having a go at me, they're having a go at me because it's coming from the right place. Mm-hmm. And I use these guys, one's male, one's female, as my ass kickers, the reality check people, right? And we don't hang around socially. We don't, we know we have boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think that they probably feel the same way. Probably like, Chris is such a dick. No, deep down, we have really serious admiration for each other. But you don't always have to like the person. What you need is that person to know that person is going to get the very best out of you. And I think that's the way you need to be able to trust someone, is to know that they've got shared values. So, for example, they're both family people, right? So, therefore, when I'm pushing myself too hard, they're the ones in my corner going, hey, do you think that that's fair on Lucy and the children? And that's what I mean. I don't like the advice I get sometimes, because it's kind of like shit. So when I say we don't like each other much, I say it with a big grin on my face, because I think there's this professional admiration. Then I've got mentors that have become very, very good friends, right? And Eric Granger is one of them. He has been in my corner for 30 years. 25 years. Bob Baldwin. So Eric was the former state manager of Bupa, then went on to be a governor on the Council of Universities. Rundle Mall, the Adelaide City Council chairman for the Rundle Mall Authority. Very, very well-respected man for very high morals. And it's someone that I always wanted to be like. Bob Baldwin, who's a dear, dear, dear friend now. My first ever action agenda to government, he was the sitting secretariat. He's a federal member, ex-front bencher. And he took me under his wing from that first meeting. And he was like, you got talent. And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, let's get you into politics. And I'm like, hell no, that ain't happening. But Bob showed me how politics works behind the scenes. And, he took me to budget dinners. And I met, John Howard, the former Prime Minister, Peter Costello, he's a Liberal member. And so I got to really understand the workings, when I met, Joe Hockey before he became, ambassador to New York. And every time I bump into these people in the planes, because we compete for the same seat, even domestically, or we see each other in the lounge, there's still, and so really good mentors who become your friends can open so many doors. And for example, Bonnie's partner, Thomas, has just won the pre-selection seat for the seat of Grey. And so I said, Thomas, how's the mentoring going? I said, okay, I'll call Bob. So I know that Bob's already, he messaged me back, said, yep, set me up with a meeting with Thomas, and I'm happy to do that. And so I guess what I'm saying to you is, when you have shared values and you have alignment, your mentors and your coaches can become your friends. Like Taki, right? I sent him a message. He's in Portugal on holidays, but he's never really on holidays. He's just a nomad who walks around with no shoes. And so he was over there, and I just sent him a message of thank you, right? Like I'm a really grateful person, and there was some stuff that he did, and some things that I saw, and I just wanted to express to him the gratitude that I had for the person that he is, and the way that he, welcomed me in Noosa when I hung out with him, and him and Kira Marie, and have inspired me, and then he wrote back to me, he goes, with this big cheesy grin that he has, instead of writing to me, he took the time to write a video as he was walking through the hotel, and said some really nice things, and checked in on me. Taki, if you're listening to this, you haven't replied, but you're on holidays. I'll forgive you for that. No, but the cool thing is, it's finding people that, bottom line, align values, strip out the emotion. Simone, so many people make the decision of, oh my God, I love the car that person's driving, they must be successful. It's bullshit. Right? Most of it is bullshit. Okay. I know people that drive. I know people that drive expensive cars and live in shit houses, right? And wear fancy clothes and can't put food on the table, right? Mm-hmm. It's all a fucking show, and it is an embarrassing situation. And I really dislike that approach. The only reason I went out and bought the Range Rover was because my clients were saying, we pay you so much and you drive a 10-year-old Toyota Kluger. And I said, mate, I really don't give a shit about the car I drive. I had paintings in my house that are worth more than the car I was driving, and I don't give a shit because that's for me. Does that make sense? And I think this is really important. But I do understand that there is that. So also, don't get wrapped into the smoke and mirror shit.
How do you use behind the facade, though? Are you literally kind of stalking people to see
No,
what they're doing?
Don't stalk. Look for commonality, right? Ask questions. Go read the freaking reviews on LinkedIn. If they don't have endorsements on LinkedIn or Google reviews, you'll know if a Google review is bullshit. It's really, 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 really hard to get fake LinkedIn reviews because you actually have to have a profile. You have to have a profile picture. You have to have, if you click on on someone's recommendation, the first thing I do, especially when I'm seeking out people that I want to do business with, I'll use LinkedIn. I'll have a look and I'll go straight. I don't care about what they've done. I go straight to the recommendations. And if I see that someone's got only 2, that doesn't bother me, right? Like I'll click on it, and most people only have 5, right? Like the average is 5. I think I've got like 40 something, right? And I'll click on that, and then I'll go to that person's profile. If that profile has no information, then I'm kind of like, this just seems like bullshit, right? And so then I ask questions. Doesn't mean I discount that person. I jump on and have a chat to their team. I have a chat to them, and then I get to the person. I'm like, you are a douchebag. Don't worry about it. Like, you know what I mean? But I never judge anyone. That's the point I'm trying to make. So many people make judgments, right? For example, I'm known to swear a little bit. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person, right? And I don't think anyone's ever actually said to me I'm a bad person for swearing. But it's more the fact that, and I'm aware of it, but I'm very passionate about what I do. I don't swear because I want to get a kick out of it, right? It's a bit like Gary Vee. Gary Vee was being interviewed by a school teacher who had a crack at him saying, don't you think that all the profanities that come out of your mouth are a poor reflection on your kids? He goes, I fucking swear at my kids all the time. And he just stood there, and she was just like, and what, you think that's okay? Who the fuck are you to tell me? This is exactly saying, who the fuck are you to tell me how to raise my own kids? Right? Like, do my kids swear at you? And he goes, well, I'm not their teacher. I said, so, and he kept swearing. But for Gary, it's just the way he is. He's always been like that. But I think a lot of people forget that, this is a guy who, took his dad's liquor store. He didn't go to Harvard. Yeah. Right? Like, so everyone's to themselves. And I think Gary is probably one of the most authentic people online that you see. It's a bit much sometimes, like shit. It's like, oh yeah, dude. But that's who he is. And I reckon that's a he's done an unbelievable job becoming who he's become, and there's no bullshit to him. It is what it is, and I think that's the authenticity. So look for those things, don't get sucked into. I see so many people going to work with, really big coaches, right? Like, I won't say anything because it's not appropriate, but I watch them go and work for people that have massive brands. You're not getting coached by them. So I don't get that concept, right? You're not getting coached. You're not getting any advice from those people. You're getting advice from mediocre people most of the time, because they're people that were either in the program and weren't successful, who then became coaches, right? And I don't say that to take the piss out of those people. Some people are better coaches than they are in their businesses, right? But I think look for the credibility. Look for the thing. The other day someone said to me, "Oh, Christian, I really want to work with you, but I'm really looking for a mindset coach." I couldn't stop laughing. And they're like, "Did I say something?" I said, you just said probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And they're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "What's a mindset coach? Like, what is it that you need? Do you need someone to teach you about a growth mindset? Because I used to write publications for that. Do you need someone? Because I think what you need is someone to kick your fucking ass." I said, "Because you've got so much talent, but you are holding yourself back with all the roadblocks, all the procrastination." I said, "You don't need a mindset coach. You need someone who's going to lean into you and say, lean into the fucking resistance and be brave." And they were like, "Oh, shit." I'm like, "That's it. That's what you need. Now go away and think about it." It's the same person I said is going to join the program. And they said to me, it was a very intense conversation for 15 minutes. But my point being is, don't get sucked into what the marketing hype is telling you should do. Like, there's a fucking coach for everything now. So what are you meant to have? 15 coaches, right? I have advisors, but my advisor, I have one coach and then I have 4 advisors, right? One's all about finance and numbers, right? And why? Because I have to be on top of my own game in my own company, but I have to also be on top of my game as a chairman. And so I want to know and understand if I'm looking at the data correctly. We hang out once a month. We work through my numbers, and then we have a chat and conversation about those things. They're not my accountant either. That's independent again. And they're not my bookkeeper, who's also a chartered accountant. So, I've surrounded myself, because why? That was my first weakness. Christian 1.0, that was my first weakness. Never going to happen again, right? Like, I can never say never, but that me being the issue of that situation, never going to happen. Then I have a coach in sales and marketing, or predominantly in marketing, because, the game is changing all the time, and I want someone who's completely aware of what's there. And then I have, people that are my moral compass. And then I have, unpaid mentors, like, Bob and Eric and people like that support me to no end. So you've got to look at what you want. But a lot of those are 4 of those, 3 are official, and, the other 2/3 are informal. So it's kind of how you want to go. I don't believe in having, being like Karim, who had 9 coaches at one point, pretty much teaching him all the same shit. And thank God that he's gone down to 1 or 2. I think it might be 2.
So essentially you're saying you can have multiple coaches and advisors, but not in the same wheelhouse.
No, but also, why not look for a person that can meet all your needs? That's the other point I'm making. Don't look at, for example, one thing that I really liked about Karim is he wanted to be a TEDx speaker, so he went and hired a professional TEDx coach. That makes so much sense, because that's all that person taught was, hey, I'm going to get you on a TEDx stage somewhere in the US. That was the game plan. So it was so that's almost like a project, right? So I think that's important. But I think going back to my point, you got to find someone that aligns with your values, and so that's why we have our values up, well, they're behind me, all the time. We will strive for good to great. We seek and think and see things differently than other people. These are values. This is integrity. This is accountability. This is, getting shit done. I just fucking won't compromise on stuff. It's not me. And I'll work harder. Oh, Jesus, that was loud. I work harder than most people. Not hard because I have to. I'm writing some content around, we only get 18 really good years with our children, right? After that, they fly the nest and it's see you later. So you got 18 birthdays to celebrate. And so I've just been writing about that and thinking, and this morning while I was coming back from training with Trent, I was in the car and I drove past my grandparents' old supermarket, right? A big shopping centre that they actually built from the ground up. They lived behind it when they migrated to Australia. A really cool story in itself. And as I was driving, I thought of them and I thought of my grandparents in Italy. And in that moment, I knew they'd be proud of the father that I've become. Like, it was because I was writing this stuff yesterday, obviously, as I drove past it, the memory bank in my heart just lit up. And I thought, you guys are proud of me and you're smiling at me right now. And why? Because I grew up in a family that was complete opposite. Like, everyone worked. No one had time for the children. You did your own shit. You played on your own. You did your own shit. You were lucky if you went on a holiday. And it wasn't a case of money. There was money, right? There wasn't an abundance of money. And in fairness, my father worked really, really hard and we never went without. But it's not like there was a lot of love or admiration. You had to compete for that. In my house, there's way too much love, right? No, really. And our kids have been away, for a couple of days with my mother-in-law. And I keep ringing them, And I'm like, hey, you coming home? And then apparently Leo said, yeah, my mother-in-law, Emma, who's amazing, said, yeah, Leo wants to come home. And I call Leo Bushki. And sometimes now I call him Douchki because he does douchey things, right? And he doesn't like that very much. But it's, it's such a rewarding thing being a parent. And it's also a really hard job. It's a job, man. Like my wife, she works her ass off in our house and works full time or part time. But it's a hard gig, man. And it is a team effort. It is a team effort. But yeah, as I said, I think that reflecting back on that, it's to me again, if you don't have family values, I'm not the right person to work with. Because I'm not going to make you work 100 hours a week. There are plenty of other coaches out there that will make you work 100 hours a week because they don't give a shit. They don't have children. I love people who don't have any kids and think the world is really fucking easy. And it's like, mate, I never used to have kids until I was 38 years old, right? And I never thought it was hard. So I never thought it was easy because I could see the struggle that my friends were going through. But I look at so many people who travel and other coaches who are out there making all this fucking noise and they got no responsibility. And it's like, you really want to be coached by that person who doesn't understand it? And then when you look at the demographic, a lot of the people are people with no children. So again, that is a reason to join that person. And I know a couple of them, like Michael Johnson's a rock star, top bloke, the Mojo master. He's an Adelaide boy. I've known him for a long time now. When he was a personal trainer. He has invested so much money in his own education. I give him credit for that. Mega education. And, he's traveling the world and doing what he needs to do. And, he works with people to shift their mindset into where they need to go and do. So, again, there are really good people out there. There's also really shit people. And I think that's what you need to distinguish. And if you don't know, then ask someone. I'm happy to tell you who you want to work with. I'm not going to push just me because at the end of the day, you only want to work with us if you've got the right attitude. It's why we have such a high retention rate in the high 90s. It's why we're growing and we're happy to grow slowly. We're not out there looking for 50 new people a month. That's not what I want. We're happy to have one new person a month, integrate them into what we do, bring them into our cult. Right, but you know what it is. Now listen, I've got to go. I've got my squad call now in 5. But does that answer the question? I know it went a little bit everywhere.
I think there's still a lot to unpack in that, and perhaps we should do a full episode on that because I think there's still a lot of areas we didn't even touch on in terms of like how do you approach these people, especially if it's not a paid coach as such. If you're looking for a mentor and you want to connect with someone that you're not a part of. I think we can dig into that in another conversation. I'd love to hear from anyone. If you really enjoyed the back half of this hot seat about mentorship and coaching, if you'd like to hear some more, drop us a comment. Let us know what you would actually like Christian to dig into and to talk about. I've loved this episode. To understand that we're not just getting caught up in the marketing, because that is quite often what I have heard and seen and what I've actually experienced myself. So once again, thank you for your time and insights on this awesome episode of The Hot Seat. We are so grateful to be here and to share this with you every single week. So drop us a comment, hashtag replay if you're watching this on replay, and we'll be back with you next Tuesday with some great new insights.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us on The Hot Seat. We hope today's session gave you valuable insights to drive your business forward.
Remember, every challenge is an opportunity for growth.
Every question brings us closer to the answers that can transform our businesses. Stay connected with us, follow our journey, share your thoughts, and be a part of our community.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so that you never miss future episodes. Together, let's elevate your business to new heights.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Hot Seat.